You're listening to Driving Place-Based Innovation, a podcast series by NewcastleGateshead Initiative, produced in partnership with the digital tourism think tank. I'm Nick Hall, and I'll be your host for this series where we're going to be looking at how digital and technology innovation is driving transformation of Northeast England's visitor economy. Throughout the series, we'll be sitting down with organisations near and far, balancing a local perspective where we hope to shine a light on innovation in and around Newcastle with global perspectives, bringing together learnings from further afield. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to be sure that you don't miss out on future episodes. For more information about the series or to get in touch, just head over to ngi.org.uk/podcast, where you'll be able to find out more information and how to get involved. In episode 5 of Driving Place-Based Innovation, we shine a light on how we can champion local supply chains. We'll be offering you 3 different takes on the importance of authenticity and why it is so important to work hard at building local supply chains within the destination. First, we'll meet with Chris Jewitt, founder of Food and Drink Northeast, together with Ian Thomas, Destination Director at NewcastleGateshead Initiative. They'll be telling us more about how they're working together to develop different local initiatives to bring the tourism and hospitality sector closer to local supply chains, reflecting on why now represents a key moment to seize and to celebrate local. We'll then head over to Finland, where we speak with Anna-Kaisa Ojala, responsible for digital strategy and development at Visit Finland. She'll be telling us more about how they developed their data hub, the importance of a strong and authentic local product offer, and how technology is a key pillar in not only building local supply chains, but also getting them out to the global marketplaces where customers can find them, where distribution represents the other end of the chain.
So I'm Chris Jewitt. I'm the CEO of Food and Drink Northeast. So we're a trade organisation set up in 2019 to help support and celebrate the Northeast food, drink and hospitality industry.
And I'm Ian Thomas, Destination Director at NewcastleGateshead Initiative. My main role is to look at the kind of strategic approach to the visitor economy over the next 10 years in Newcastle and Gateshead. And I'm also part of the team delivering the first Destination Development Partnership pilot for UK and England, and looking at how that can be used to maximise the potential of the visitor economy in the Northeast.
Great to have you guys. So starting with yourself, Chris, tell us a little bit about some of the values that underpin Food and Drink Northeast. I know you work with a lot of passion, but also collectively driven by sustainability and building a more circular economy. How does that look, and how do you drive forward that mission together with your partners?
I think it's a really good question, Nick, because I think it's a question we're often asked about where those values came from, and how we engage with them, and then how we, I suppose, work with our network to enact them on the ground. But I suppose for us, it's probably important to understand the context and landscape and where those values came from originally. So when we launched back in 2019, there'd been quite a lot of, I call it post-mortem, but we've done a lot of work over the previous 3 or 4 years to look at what had been in existence prior to us as an organisation. And I suppose a lot of that work came from the knowledge that we were largely underperforming as a region. So if you look specifically at food and drink, and I'm not including hospitality in here, but specifically in food and drink, and that could be from primary production to manufacturing. If you were to compare us to our kind of more northern neighbours like Yorkshire and Humber or the Northwest, in terms of economic impact on the region, there wasn't a great deal happening here. And we could debate on a different podcast all the different reasons as to why that was. But nevertheless, it was a kind of, rather than it being a very, very small differential, it was kind of an abyss in terms of difference. So when you look at GVA, kind of gross value added to the economy, it was, the Northeast was around 2% at the time when we started as an organisation. And we've not measured that since, but at that time, if you compared that to Yorkshire or the Northwest, they were kind of 12, 13%. And when I was wearing a previous hat, I was working for the Department for International Trade, now the Department for Business and Trade, working to help with, I suppose, the export portfolio of the Northeast. And it was just massively felt that there was a huge gap in terms of business support, in terms of strategic direction, so more crucially in terms of identity and collaboration. So we did a lot of work, and I suppose we kind of committed to being very much kind of grassroots up as an organization. So we spent a lot of time talking to businesses right across the supply chain, so very small producers, big manufacturers, I'll not name them, but people know who they are. And there was just a general sense that there was no forward momentum, and there was a lot of inward looking or sort of navel gazing as a region, but not a lot of that turned into collaboration or a sense of how we take it all forward collectively. So when you look at kind of our mission and our values, you talk about developing a vibrant and engaged community. That was the first thing. It was kind of, where do we light those small fires to get people excited about who we are, what we have in our locker, what we can do, and what more we can achieve if there's more strategic intent around that bit of work. So yeah, I mean, it was a tall order, because it was a cultural piece of work as opposed to just an economic piece of work. Or we had to really dig deep and listen to people and understand what it was they wanted and what it was they felt they had never had before. So yeah, I mean, I could wax lyrical about that, but I'm happy for you to ask questions.
It's always really interesting to see how, beyond everything, it seems to always come down to the human aspect, the relationships, the motivation, the incentive, the sense of being part of something. So it's really interesting to hear you kind of share that this cannot only be an economic or economically driven activity. Ian, obviously in the role of a DMO, collaboration and fostering collaboration and trying to create the right mechanism to drive innovation is really key. I know you developed initiatives such as the Hospitality Innovation Tourism Supply Initiative, which has been designed with that in mind. Tell us a little bit about the interplay between the work that you're doing and the work that Chris has been doing.
I think Chris and I have probably been chatting for the best part of 4 years, desperate to get our teeth into something together, and through the Hospitality Innovation Tourism Supply Chain project, that's really allowed us to do it. And I think, take that back to its essence, we're two organisations that want to put the Northeast on the map and want people to understand that to change perceptions and awareness of the Northeast actually is fundamental to what we're trying to do. We know once people taste it, see it, do it, they love the Northeast, and actually the more we chatted, the more we realised those missions we had were aligned and what we want to do, and actually putting that in practice through a project like this, where you've got kind of 700 or more businesses the opportunity to kind of bring their supply chain into the tourism sector, really collaborate on something that can make a difference, can really showcase the authenticity of the region, because actually those local producers, those local crafts, local arts, local food and drink are what tell the story of that place. And I think the innovative part of that is we're giving them the vehicles to be able to do that. So things like the supply chain portal, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but also things like the work Chris is doing around Northeast Chef of the Year, and actually badging that up and packaging it up to really bring hotels into that, to bring colleges into that, to bring the rest of the sector to collaborate around shared missions, is something that we're really excited to be working on, essentially. But I think for us, we've got I talk about this all the time. The Northeast is at the bottom of the league tables. We can't get away from that. We're bottom of international visitors. We're bottom of domestic visitors. And to move that dial, we have to work better together. We have to work smarter. And we really have to get people to understand why the Northeast is a place they should be.
Sometimes a challenge really gives you the drive and the motivation to address that and overcome that. And often that's where the most creativity actually emerges from. So I guess you can use this challenge as something that kind of takes you forward. Tell us a little bit about kind of that determination and also some of the initiatives which you've formulated. I know one of those is the Buy Supply platform. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Buy Supply platform, I think it's a really important initiative in its very early days, but not in terms of the depth in which we've gone into thinking around what solutions it's trying to provide. And I think if you look at the food, drink, hospitality industry, and you look at the groundswell of entrepreneurial businesses that are coming up through the ranks across the UK, it's a very, very sort of concentrated and competitive marketplace. And I think it's very difficult to sometimes throw, we're going to come at this from a very, very pro-Northeast perspective. And I think it's very difficult for often to take a business that hasn't got a great deal of experience outside of this region and throw it into new sales channels that are perhaps more domestic outside of the Northeast and are more national, and then beyond that, international. And I think our vision for the platform was to really create an ecosystem that was kind of on our terms. And it came from the ashes of consultation and speaking to businesses and what they wanted. And effectively, they wanted to kind of enable local connections. They want to they want to show on supply chains, and they want to grow collaboratively together as businesses. And I think sometimes we have that when you look at what's really interesting about the work that myself and Ian are doing together, is sometimes it's this really stark disconnect between, let's say, hotels and restaurants and primary supply chain. And that's sometimes the reasons for that are not very obvious. So it's not through lack or desire of sourcing more locally. It's just if it's not on your nose and it's not obvious to people, then you tend to stick with the status quo, in terms of who you buy from, what distributor or wholesaler you go to. And I think what we wanted with this supply chain, with this particular platform, is to create this ecosystem whereby we could create that in the marketplace. So it's more like fish in a barrel. So we're going to have buyers that we have vetted and curated in a certain way that we know that the profile of those buyers meet the needs of the network that we've built. And likewise, we could talk beyond the kitchen tables, another project that we've got going on at the moment, which is an incubator for small business. How do we get businesses that we can sort of vet, put through a process, and make sure that they're shelf ready for a buyer? So what work can we do to make that transaction easier? So quite often you might speak to a retail buyer who they might get 100 applications a day of new products and product samples coming through the letterbox and hitting their desk, but maybe only 5% of them are ready, anywhere near ready to being, proven at that level, to have all their ducks in a row, whether it's margin and and all of the certifications required. So I think this platform allows us to not necessarily create shortcuts, but create an environment based upon trust and kind of reciprocal trade.
And I think it's the real value of actually being able to get some of those supplies to work together. So if a hotel needs whatever it may be, 100 of whatever that product is, we've got two suppliers who can come together to fulfill that order rather than it going into kind of a major national supplier. That's a real opportunity for those businesses to work together, but it's a real opportunity to keep that local as well. What we want is a guest to be able to walk into a hotel. In the hotel bar, they see gins, whiskies, etc. that come from within 10, 15, 20 miles. When they get served the food at breakfast, they see the sausages, they see the bacon, they see actually when they're walking through the halls, the artwork comes from around these doors, and we really start to immerse our visitors in the region they're in, because that will make them spend more. They'll see the things. Actually, I'd love to take some of that home as a gift. They start to talk that up. They take the photos. That product gets out there, and it becomes self-fulfilling. More people get involved in the supply pole, and it's really important. Despite the fact kind of Chris has come from that food and drink side, the team at Fadney have really looked at actually all that supply chain, gifts, toiletries, food, everything being as local as we can make it. Don't get me wrong, we won't solve every problem yet. Some of that will still have to come from outside, but I think we're in a really great place to start it in the region.
It's certainly really innovative to kind of see this opportunity, but also the problem with today's supply chains that are dominated by international and global networks. And in fact, the best supply chain that we can tap into is the one on our doorstep. But perhaps sometimes that's the one that's least visible, that's least accessible. And sometimes we just don't manage to make those connections with businesses which are on our doorstep. When we think about tourism, the authenticity of the offer is rooted in local experiences, local produce, local craftsmanship. And I think, as you've kind of eloquently described, Ian, being able to discover that when you visit a place is a really key part of what you can take away from that and what you might share with friends and family and as an advocate of that destination. So it's a really central part of the visitor experience. Tell us a little bit about how you both see innovation. I guess this is a great example of innovating at a structural level. You're creating the right mechanisms to address or overcome these barriers. How do you see innovation taking place amongst businesses within the sector? Is that a drive to do things differently, to take risks sometimes?
I think it's an interesting word, isn't it, innovation? And I know that Ian and I have chatted about this several times, and it's kind of the hot topic. It's like the word sustainability. Both come with capital S in a small case, And I think with innovation, it's subjective to business. And I think that's quite sometimes hard when you're engaging with businesses that are so diverse right across the hospitality and food and drink supply chain. It's a difficult one to pin down. And it's also something that needs to be demystified, because quite often when we talk about innovation to businesses, they think of shiny objects or software or widgets or gadgets or things that are you can touch and feel, that are interventions within a business, and it kind of frightens them off. But actually, sometimes when we talk about innovation to to a hotelier or a restaurateur, it's about embedding a culture of kind of agility and change management within a business. How do we approach HR and recruitment in a different way? What could we do differently? So I think for us, having that subjective understanding that innovation doesn't just have one hat, it means something different to every single business you work with, is really critical.
Yeah, and I think I might have mentioned this previously, but for me, it's about improving as a business. I think there's innovation in lots of different terms, and actually, if we talk about it too far, the wrong end of that spectrum from the innovation point of view, we terrify some of our businesses, and we have to talk about it as developing the destination. I think for some businesses, they absolutely grab innovation and really, really run with it. I mean, Maldron Hotel with their butler bot, bringing kind of a butler robot to their room service. They saw their room service go up by 17% because everyone wanted to see the robot knocking at the door. They were quite disappointed when a human was bringing their food and kind of sending it back. I don't want it now if the robot's not delivering it. But for others, that can be as simple as kind of moving still to this day, moving their reservations from a guest book onto being online. I think for some businesses, that is still innovation. So I think we have to think about the audience as we're taking them through this innovation journey. And actually, we've also got, I think we need to talk outside of the visitor economy. Sometimes there are some amazing innovations happening in kind of the tech sector and others who are doing great things. And we need to introduce some of our businesses to kind of some of the thinking outside of the tourism economy. I think we can be quite insular at times.
I think it demonstrates the importance of a collaboration like this, because you've brought together two theoretically different sectors, but in reality, they converge and they overlap in every single sense of the word. And when we think about the tourism economy, we perhaps mistakenly narrow that down to a business that would classify itself as a tourism business. But if we think about the visitor economy, that's a much broader offer, and there's many more stakeholders that have a role to play. And I think this sense of partnership that the two of you have built up together is really key to going beyond and expanding the opportunities. And then I think, again, as you've both shared, if we then look at the supply chain beyond that, we see an even bigger footprint of an industry like the visitor economy or tourism, and how that can go all the way to local producers that perhaps would not in any way consider themselves tourism or related to tourism, but actually they are part of that supply chain, and so they're a crucial aspect of that. I guess ending on this topic of innovation, because it's a very interesting one, and as you say, there are really different ideas about innovation, from agility and the mindset that we approach our work, through to perhaps for some the next iPhone. I think that's definitely something that excites me. But if we think about supply chains, there's not always I imagine it's not always the determination or the sense that there's a need to innovate, because perhaps there's not always the sense that there's a problem. If we source through global brands and we perhaps go the easiest or the cheapest route, that doesn't necessarily present itself to us as something that's broken. But at the same time, as we know the importance of supporting and also developing an offer that's more connected with the local landscape and communities, we know that actually strengthens the product and the offer as well. How do we apply innovation in a situation where it's not a response to a problem? I think COVID is probably the best example of where we've seen innovation out of necessity, but this seems to be something a little bit different.
It's interesting you mentioned COVID, Nick. That was one of the points I was going to make. I think COVID did create a little bit of a challenge in this, in that people can't get their hands on some of the things that they might have been able to get the next year through national supplies. They just aren't there, and they can't get them as quickly. Some of those supply chains sadly went out of business during COVID, and the delivery networks. And actually, the other challenge that national supplies, businesses are having to answer their carbon output now. They are having to look at their sustainability goals. So I think COVID and the way the world has moved in 3 years has slightly created an innovation challenge in there, certainly made businesses think differently. But I think for us in this circumstance, the innovation is about changing kind of the understanding of what's available locally, because actually there's a great example to real micro level. A business up in Northumberland, a really reputable restaurant, doing great things, Battlestead's Inn, they actually kind of almost applied that manufacturing model and brought their suppliers closer to them. They had a butcher they used that was 10 miles away. That was too far for them. So they helped them buy the unit that was in the same village to be able to kind of even get that product quicker. And I think when businesses start to think about it in that way, that is really innovative about actually, I want to be able to have the freshest menu, the kind of most, to be able to change my menu based on what's available that day. That is innovative thinking from that business owner. And that brings a premium. And I think when you start to think, if you think about the challenges hotels and others are facing, it's about rate. It's not about heads in beds as much as it was now. It's about how do you kind of create that margin. And the one area margins were being squeezed by national chains were kind of on that supply. You look at kind of some of the menus, people taking fish off the menu because the price change. Getting that locally and getting that at source. We've got a fish quay not kind of 15 miles away from the city centre. I think that's where that innovation is.
Can I just build upon that as well, Ian? I think that's really, really interesting, because Nick, you alluded to this just before there about the reactive nature of innovation, and I think there was that period, certainly mid and post pandemic, and then more recently with Brexit. I mean, I listened to an interesting podcast myself recently about deglobalization, and that is happening to supply chain now. And I think what's happened now is that comfort blanket of globalization, that everything can be on your doorstep 24/7. It's been removed, and I think what's happening now within businesses, certainly with ones I work with, and the example that Ian's just given, we are seeing businesses now adopt the idea of innovating. They wouldn't call it innovation. I mean, that's the interesting thing. We've debated this quite often. They wouldn't call it innovation. They would just say it's progress, and they would see themselves, it's like muscle memory. They've taken all their learning from the pandemic and realized that there is an opportunity, and that opportunity has been to shorten supply chains. It's been to incubate those businesses that ordinarily wouldn't have been big enough to service those contracts, or a host of restaurants, so they wouldn't have been able to grow. But now they can see an opportunity, and it's much clearer for them. And I suppose the runway towards them being able to fulfill that sort of opportunity is much more clear to those businesses now as well. So we're starting to see a real, I think, seam of risk takers in business. There's a lot more of an appetite to change, and I think it's moving from that reactionary position of like, you know, having it or accepting that you need a culture of agility within the business, to actually embracing it and embracing the variables and working with them and trying to create that culture within the business.
So perhaps to conclude, it's an interesting moment in time where the reactionary nature of innovation is perhaps still very much present and driving things in a way which is less obvious than, of course, with the pandemic and Brexit. But we still see mega shifts happening in the world around us. And Ian, you mentioned the drive from customers to see that businesses are sustainable, that they can reduce their carbon footprint. So in essence, this is also adding pressure. But also, as you mentioned, Chris, the embedding of innovation as a shift in mindset, an evolution of how we think about business and how we identify opportunities and how we grow is also a really key part of that. So I guess to conclude, there's a lot of really exciting things happening in the Northeast right now. There's some very clear, brilliant projects which are connecting and helping to make that happen. But there's also a general shift in attitudes and mindset, which is really exciting because it perhaps for the first time really brings the possibility of connecting all of those local supply chains, creating shorter supply chains, and helping businesses to champion other local businesses together with their customers to the forefront for the first time, probably in decades, as we've had this incredible opportunity of a globalized world. But we now have an opportunity to bring some of those things back to the local level where, of course, that sometimes not only makes the most sense, but it's also more authentic, more sustainable, and of course, it's great for the local economy. Now, let's head over to Finland and check in with Anna-Kaisa Ojala to hear more on what the Finnish approach can teach us.
Yes, well, I'm from Visit Finland, and my expertise is the digitalization of the Finnish travel industry. So in Visit Finland, of course, our main mandate and focus is to build demand for Finland within international travelers, which is of course common for most of the national tourism boards. But we also in Visit Finland have a very strong development and support function for the travel industry regarding three topics. Digitalization is one, which is on my expertise, and then there's sustainability, a huge topic, of course. So we support sustainability development also, and then lastly, data. So managing by data is one of the areas that we focus, that we build competence also. So not just building demand and preference, but also strong support and development function.
That's really nice to see something that's approached in such a holistic way. And one of the flagship elements of that is the Visit Finland Data Hub, which I believe you launched February last year. Tell us a little bit more about the idea behind that and why that is so important when we think about it from a product point of view.
Yes, I quite often say when people are interested or ask questions about our development function, like why it's so important to have this. So I think about it from building demand, right? So when that's our main focus, then we also need to make sure that we have the right supply, right? So when we build demand to Finland, let's say within people who are interested in sustainability and sustainable destinations and products. So then, of course, we need to make sure that we have the right supply available as well. So I think it makes sense. Like when we build demand, we need to have the right supply. And when you think about the digital ecosystem, it's super complex, very complicated, loads of different channels, loads of different technologies in use, and the content is always a bit of a challenge, if you will, because distributing and managing the content, right, takes a lot of effort from the travel businesses. So we wanted to help distributing the content by building a Visit Finland data hub. And what it is, it's digital content hub, if you will, a national content hub, which enables the travel businesses very easily to register, log in to Data Hub, and then insert and manage their product content. And it's a non-bookable content. So what I mean by this, it doesn't have inventory or availabilities or prices, etc., but it has a sort of marketing type of content that can be stored in Data Hub. So it's a digital database. And then we also have an open API that enables several different digital channels then to retrieve and publish this data. So for instance, our own channels in Visit Finland, we need this data. The local and regional DMOs, they want to publish their regional products in their own websites, and several different channels where our products and services needs to be accessible, so they all can utilize the API and retrieve the content. So truly makes it much easier for the local businesses to manage their data in one database where it can distribute it to several different channels.
I think you really help us understand the importance of not only developing outstanding, authentic, really appealing product and experiences that exist within a destination, but also packaging and organizing that so that that can be discovered and distributed through stories, through content, through inspirational platforms and digital experiences, and even through bookable experiences, whether that's through partners and destinations or whether that's through global supply chains and distributors. So I think we've got a bit of context which helps us see that connection between an amazing product, but also the need to brand and package that so that that product can be discoverable. Tell us, I know you've done quite a lot of work as well at an experience level, conceptually thinking about what are the drivers for different markets, what are the right experiences to focus on. Tell us why experience development, and in particular the local supply chain around those experiences, is so important in tourism.
That's a very, very good topic, Nick. And definitely been loads. It's a hot topic in Finland, and I bet in loads of destinations. And well, destination is only as good as the local businesses, right? In Finland, we have, of course, the big players and the big chain and corporation type of companies in the travel industry. But then we have a long tail of small and medium businesses, family-owned businesses, and these are crucial to, I bet, to every destination, because those are the experiences that the travelers want to find and be able to experience. Of course, supported by the big players, but I think for the destination to be authentic and unique, you need these small and medium, even micro businesses that can provide the truly authentic Finnish experiences for our guests. So I think loads of destinations are properly, at least us here in Finland, we are thinking about the role of the DMOs and the businesses, and actually like who has the role of packaging these very, very small, unique experiences or accommodation even, if you will, and then with these big players, and what is the role of DMO, or who's the actual packaging and selling these products?
It seems that if we think about what you just shared there, the small businesses, as you say, which are often family owned, are perhaps in a very, very unique position, a uniquely competitive position to connect all of the supply chain that could exist or could be part of that offer locally, because of the close local collaborations that can easily be harnessed and fostered between, say, farmers, the agricultural sector, or even between other tourism businesses that can build connections between their experiences. And as you were saying, I think this is definitely something where they actually have not only the opportunity, but even the edge over those larger multinational companies that also play a pretty dominant role in the tourism industry. So this is quite exciting when we think about this kind of optimism that we can associate with that. But what role do you think innovation plays in helping those businesses to identify those opportunities and to build those collaborations? I'm particularly conscious of the really brilliant work that Visit Finland has focused on to address things like the seasons, where, for example, in Lapland in the north, it's a traditionally strong winter offer, and there's a huge opportunity that's not been tapped into, but also needs some convincing and some innovation to develop an offer which is also adapted for the summer. How do you see the potential to create innovation there?
Yes, I'm very glad, Nick, that you brought up the our destination, Lapland, and exactly right. Like Lapland, for instance, is one of our destinations is heavily relying on the winter season. And now we are working together, Visit Finland, together with the different Lapland destinations to extend the season, but also to even not open up, but reintroducing a new season, which would be the snowless time of Lapland. So the Lapland summer, because the destination is still fantastic. Like the Lapland summer is as fantastic as it is in the winter. But introducing a new season or extending the season, it's a huge effort. And as said, that's where the whole sort of the supply chain needs to work together. And it's also a bit of a public and private effort together as well, because there needs to be the infrastructure in place as well. And as we are working now on this topic in Finland, at the moment, we do realize that it doesn't happen within the first season, or it probably doesn't happen within the first 3 seasons either. So it's a long-term commitment, and it takes commitment from all the different players. It takes commitment from us as a destination. It takes a commitment from the businesses, because they are quite heavily taking the risk on this as well, as you very well understand. Like if they keep their business, they used to, having their business open, let's say 6 months, and then doing something other business or something totally else, or having holidays for 6 months. So they are, of course, taking a bit of a risk when opening and extending the season. So it's definitely a mutual effort within the destination, the businesses, public and private, and then us in Visit Finland as well. But super exciting opportunity as well, and definitely makes us as a destination much more sustainable if we have more year-round sustainable destinations. So very important for us and for the Latin destinations.
And of course, talking about sustainability, creating opportunities is really one of the key things that tourism can be a driver of, creating opportunities for year-round employment, for a more prosperous economy that doesn't only survive on a very successful winter tourism, but actually represents more of an all-year-round tourism economy. And one of the other areas that I believe you've put a lot of emphasis on is the so-called Lakeland area of Finland. Does this represent a shift, a diversification, which is perhaps a little bit different to the seasonality aspect, but more about diversification and even bringing new destinations into the tourism economy, helping to bring the opportunity of tourism to destinations which perhaps haven't traditionally sought the international market, at least?
Yes, exactly. And Lakeland is a good example of that. It's the region in the eastern Finland, mid-eastern Finland, and it's a beautiful region with it's a lakeland, so it's a land of 1,000 lakes, and it's a fantastic region and provides loads of destinations. And yes, as you said, we are now within the Lakeland region looking into maybe a bit new segments, international segments. So that definitely takes much more efforts than just the marketing efforts. So when destinations wants to tap into new segments, new markets, then there probably needs to be a quite heavy product development done, because probably the same sort of products and stories don't attract German couples than would attract a Japanese group of friends or family from US. So there's definitely a place for product development when going for new segments or new markets. And with that said, of course, for us as Finland, accessibility is extremely important as well. And as you said about Lakeland, we've been working heavily on accessibility to Finland and to Lakeland as well, to be able to these new segments to reach these destinations. Yes, so there's loads of aspects to consider on this topic.
So when we think about developing a local offer, and of course everything that is connected to that, I think it's quite clear that there are a lot of inconvenient obstacles which kind of sit in the way of that. Simple things like infrastructure, simple things like being able to justify the risk that's associated by opening up or testing a new business venture or extending the season even by a month, let alone throughout the whole year. So these are not always the most exciting things to try and tackle, but nonetheless, it seems clear that they are things that really require a collaborative, even a multi-agency approach between different DMOs and public and private sector. Really interesting to kind of hear that take. Obviously, the area that you're most passionate about is digitalization. What do you see as some of the biggest barriers or challenges that are still today, or perhaps new challenges that are faced by businesses in 2023 when we think about their current context when it comes to digital?
Yes, my favorite topic is the travel technology and the digital ecosystem. It's Nick, it's truly so complex that it's difficult to keep up with what's happening. There's so many technologies in place. There's so many different channels, and the ecosystem is, of course, constantly evolving and changing. So it is challenging for the travel businesses to keep up. Of course, as said again, like the bigger companies that have corporate structures, they of course have all the plans and capabilities for sure. But as mentioned, we have a long tail of small and medium-sized businesses. That core competence of these businesses is producing fantastic travel experiences, as it should be. But now there's new competencies required from the companies when it comes to travel technologies, reservation management system, channel management, distribution channels, loads of different, and then of course, not to mention data analytics, and then also sustainability development, etc. So there's loads of new competence required within the businesses in order for them to be competitive within the international landscape. So this is why I think very important that us in Visit Finland, we have recognized that it's important that we can provide support in this topic when it comes to digitalization, especially digital sales and distribution and building international profitable growth. And how we are trying to tap into this complex and challenging topic is because we don't sell anything. We don't participate in the booking, for instance. But what we can do and what we are helping the companies with is to build the right capabilities and competence regarding the travel technologies and digital sales and distribution.
You're absolutely right. This hugely complex array of choices that businesses have day to day when it comes to the technology that they choose to adopt, the systems they choose to use, the distribution networks and platforms that they choose to engage with. And then, of course, not only the choices, but learning how to use those different technologies and tools effectively, but also making sometimes very difficult decisions on which ones represent the right opportunity in terms of investment versus return. So it's certainly very challenging. The producer of this series is Ana Balaguer-Sanchez, production and editing by Dan Hopkins. The series is part of the Hospitality Innovation Tourism Supply Programme, which supports businesses in Northumberland, Newcastle and North Tyneside to meet challenges through innovation. The programme is funded by North of Tyne Combined Authority and delivered by NewcastleGateshead Initiative, Food and Drink Northeast and NBSL. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to get notified of future episodes. And if you've enjoyed today's podcast, why not take a moment to leave a review? Thanks, and we'll see you next time.